AnxietyCenter.com podcasts, where we talk about everything anxiety, as well as other medical, mental, behavioral, parenting, and nutritional health topics. Thank you for joining us. We hope you find today's podcast interesting and inspiring. Here are your hosts, Jim and Marilyn Folk.
Hi, I'm Jim Folk.
And I'm Marilyn Folk. We are the founders of AnxietyCenter.com and the hosts of AnxietyCenter.com podcasts.
Once again, we thank you for joining us today. This is episode 3 in our series of podcasts.
In the first 2 episodes, we talked about what anxiety is, what causes anxiety disorder, and why anxiety can produce such debilitating sensations and symptoms. Now, during those conversations, we said that stress, including the stress that anxiety causes the body, can cause the body to become stress response hyperstimulated and then symptomatic. Now, when the body becomes overly stressed and stimulated, it can present symptoms of being overly stressed, with many being similar to the sensations caused by an active stress response.
And we coined the term stress response hyperstimulation in reference to a body that's become overly stressed and stimulated due to too frequent and/or dramatic stress responses. Keep in mind that stress hormones bring about their actions because they are stimulants. For more information about this, you might want to listen to episode 2. Before we can grasp the full extent of these symptoms, we need to understand how stress affects the body and why stress can cause symptoms long after the body has been stressed.
In episode 2, we said that when we behave apprehensively, such as worrying, the body produces a stress response that secretes stress hormones into the bloodstream, and these hormones, they travel to targeted spots. Now, kind of an analogy as to how they target. If you look at the electrical receptacle on your wall, it has a very specific configuration. And if you look at the cord, the electrical cord on the end of it, it has a corresponding configuration. So it's sort of like they fit together. So in this same sort of way, these hormones have chemical configuration, and those hormones are looking for certain glands and cells that have a corresponding chemical place that they can dock. So chemically, they correspond with each other.
You bet. That's why they affect only certain spots in the body and not others. Gotcha, yeah.
Right. So they bring about specific physiological, psychological, and emotional changes that enhance the body's ability to deal with danger. So either to fight or to run away from it. Yeah. So this is the reason the stress response is often referred to as the fight or flight response.
And stress hormones are primarily made up of adrenaline and cortisol. There are other hormones too, but these are the most predominant.
Now, adrenaline is a very fast-acting hormone that causes immediate changes in the body, but only for a relatively short time, so, usually a minute or so.
Cortisol, a more powerful stress hormone, causes more dramatic changes in the body. Because cortisol is a more powerful hormone, the changes are more profound and can last a great deal longer, about 20 to 30 minutes or so.
Now, these hormones are designed to bring about really specific changes in the body, and there are many of them.
There's a lot of changes, you bet. For our podcast purposes, we're going to mention a few. For example, stress hormones cause the amygdala, which is often referred to as the fear center of the brain, to become more active, and the cortex, which is the rationalization areas of the brain, to become suppressed. This change in brain functioning increases our sensitivity and reaction to danger, while at the same time diminishes our ability to rationalize or process information clearly. Now, the brain experiences this change so that we are able to quickly detect and react to danger rather than taking time to analyze it. A quick reaction time can keep the body from harm, whereas taking the time to think about a danger can leave the body in harm's way. This change in brain functioning can increase our perception of danger, making things seem more dangerous, but it also diminishes our ability to think rationally, calmly, and clearly.
So while the stress response changes are beneficial when in real danger, these changes also have consequences that impact normal functioning. So for example, when the stress response is active, we can sense danger more quickly, and that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, an active stress response can make us feel less capable of thinking clearly and can make it harder to calm ourselves down.
Yeah, so on one hand, the active stress response is a benefit, but on the other, it's a detriment. An example of this is the fear center and the anxiety brake. When you look at the brain in terms of how it functions, the amygdala, which is the fear center, is responsible for sensing danger and reacting to it. It sends the message out there's a danger. Well, that message goes through other parts of the brain to bring about changes, and then eventually gets to the cortex area, which is the rationalization area of the brain, often referred to as anxiety brake. If we think we're no longer in danger, the cortex will apply the brake and stop the signal from returning back to the amygdala. And that works great most often. But when our stress is up, or when we're really anxious or think we're still in danger, that anxiety brake may release that message back to the amygdala, which triggers another response. And so we get the cycle going. So on one hand, that initial response and the ability for the cortex area of the brain to release it is good, especially when we're sustained danger. But it becomes a detriment when we can't stop that brake and all of a sudden we get the cycle going on. And this is just one of a multitude of changes the stress response causes.
Stress hormones can also cause the body's blood to be shunted around the body. Now, we have two major systems in the body. One is the muscle skeletal system and the other is the digestive system. They're huge systems that require large volumes of blood in order to function normally. Now, the body doesn't have enough blood in it to run both of these simultaneously. So what the body does is it shunts between these two systems. So an example is, when we have a really big meal, well, what do we want to do? Well, we want to lay on the sofa and just rest, right? We want to sit or be still. That's the body's way of keeping us from using the muscle skeletal system, and then it can shunt the majority of that blood into the digestive tract to process this large meal that we've taken in.
Right, yeah.
Right? Now, when we're in danger, what happens is with the fight or flight response, it takes priority over digestion, and so the blood is shunted away from the digestive tract to the skeletal muscles, to the heart, to the lungs, to the brain. Those are the organs that are more vital in terms of survival. Now, this change is beneficial when we're in real danger, but it also has consequences. For example, the stress response shunts blood away from the stomach, digestive system, and extremities so that it can be sent to the heart, brain, and muscles. But due to the shunting action, digestion is suspended, heart rate increases, and we can feel dizzy as blood rushes to the brain. So when the stress response changes are short term, we generally don't notice them too much. But when these changes are sustained, they can cause real problems with normal functioning. An example, in the digestive tract, we can have bloating and pain and gas. We can have balance problems, and we have changes in terms of our heating and cooling problems. So like our hands and our feet can feel cold, or we can have a general chilliness just because of this blood that's shunted away from the surface of the skin and being shunted off to the systems, organs, and glands that are necessary for fighting or running.
Yeah, you bet. As another example, stress hormones also cause the body's muscles to tighten so that they are more resilient to damage. This tightening action can make the muscles feel tight even to the point of being sore, so it can cause dramatic changes in muscle tension. Again, while this change is beneficial when in real danger, this change also has consequences. For example, people who have become stress response hyperstimulated due to sustained stress or behaving overly apprehensively can experience persistent muscle tension and pain. Fibromyalgia is thought to be caused by overactive nerves due to persistently elevated stress, such as the one we're talking about.
This is just a brief overview of the many changes the stress response brings about and how they can affect us. Now, Chapter 3 in the recovery support area of our website has more detailed information about all of this. So if you're interested, go take a look.
You bet, yeah. Based on everything we've said so far, here is an answer to a question we are frequently asked, and it is, why is it that when I'm under a lot of stress, I feel fine, but after the stress is over and I begin to relax, my symptoms show up?
Yes, we hear that one a lot.
Yeah, quite a bit. Well, here's a two-part answer.
So the first part, another function of stress hormones is to reduce the awareness of pain and discomfort. Now, the stress hormones do this so that we aren't prevented from defending ourselves even when moderately injured. So an example might be, if we were trying to run from a danger and we were to trip over something, fall, bang our knee on a rock, well, that pain could debilitate us from making an escape. And so many of us have experienced where we've been unaware of an injury that we've sustained in the midst of a serious event. But after the event was over, that's when we become aware of it. That's when we start experiencing the pain of that injury. So stress hormones, in a sense, anesthetized the body until the danger had passed.
Yeah.
So while in the midst of danger, we felt nothing, but after the danger had passed, we felt the full impact of the damage.
Yeah.
This is one reason stress symptoms show up after a stressor has passed.
Yeah, you bet. Part 2 of the answer is that the adverse effects of the stress response have long-lasting consequences. That's because short-term stress can cause long-term effects. A study some years ago found that the effects of stress can take 4 times as long to recover from as they do to incur. We call that the 4-to-1 rule. This is really, based on the idea that if you don't do anything special to reduce your stress, it'll take that long for the adverse effects of stress to be resolved. For example, some other research has found that the stress of moving takes 2 years to recover from. This is because stress hormones affect the nervous system the most. The nervous system is primarily made up of neurons, cells that have an electrochemical property. Because of their unique and complex makeup, they can take a long time to recover once they have become adversely affected by stress, and much longer than other body cells.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are other factors that contribute to stress symptoms appearing after the stress has passed, but these are the 2 most prominent. When you combine even just these 2 factors, it's easy to see why we feel worse after the stressor has passed and why we can experience symptoms of stress long after the stress is over. So again, we explain this in great detail in the recovery support area of our website. If you're interested, take a look.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's another example of that. If we experience 4 weeks of stress, while we might experience some symptoms during that stress, we don't usually experience the full impact until after the stressor is over and the body has had some time to calm down. Then it can take up to 12 weeks for the body to recover. So if you've been under a lot of stress, it's no wonder you can experience symptoms for many weeks after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why anxious people often get trapped into a struggle with anxiety and its sensations and symptoms. So they don't understand why their symptoms are lingering, so they worry that something more sinister is causing them.
Yeah.
And of course, this worry stresses the body, which keeps their symptoms going, which they continue to worry about, which keeps their body stressed, which keeps their symptoms going, and so on. So we call this the fear cycle, with one aspect feeding the other.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
So that's the overview of why symptoms often appear after the stress is over and why symptoms can persist a long time after a stressor has passed.
You bet, yeah. In our next episode, we're going to answer the question, why am I experiencing symptoms, yet I don't feel stressed or anxious? It's one we receive quite often. Mm-hmm. So we hope you join us again for that discussion.
Thanks again for joining us today. We wish you every success in overcoming problematic anxiety and its sensations and symptoms. Until next time.
Bye for now.